Congratulations, you finally have a haircut that matches your age. The note was pinned to my pillow when I jolted awake on my son's wedding day. I reached up, smooth skin, my scalp burned, the sharp smell of antiseptic still hanging there. I didn't scream. I opened the safe, pulled out the envelope for a planned transfer of $22 million and changed the game. I froze in front of the mirror in the marble-tiled bathroom. The woman staring back wasn't Eleanor Westfield, the real estate CEO who built dozens of high-rises in Boston. She was someone humiliated to the core. The thick silver hair I'd cared for so carefully, my pride was gone. All that remained was a slick, burning red, icy scalp. Tears surged, but I forced them back down. They wanted me to fall apart. They wanted me to disappear on the day I should have stood tall as the groom's mother. No, I wasn't giving Amanda that victory. On the oak nightstand, I saw an ivory envelope with neat blue ink, so carefully written it looked fake. Have a great day at my wedding. A crude heart at the end. The paper still carried an expensive perfume, the same scent I'd smelled 100 times on my future daughter-in-law. I didn't need to guess who did it. I took a long breath, trembling but clearer than ever. The bedroom safe was still open from last night, where I'd carefully placed the envelope holding the paperwork to transfer $22 million to Michael and Amanda. That was the wedding gift I'd spent weeks preparing, believing it would be the final bridge to keep my son close. Now when my fingers touched that envelope, it felt different. The paper wasn't smooth anymore. It was sharp, like a blade cutting into my palm. I gripped it, then set it back in the safe, turned the dial, and listened to the dry metal click. The decision was made. That gift was never leaving this safe. I called Avery Whitman, our longtime family attorney. He picked up after 2 rings. Eleanor, ready to sign off on the transfer. I've prepped everything you asked. I kept my voice steady. Avery put it on hold. Not a single dollar moves. And tonight, after the reception, I want you at my house. We're rewriting the entire will. Silence on the other end for a moment. Is something wrong? I closed my eyes. Just one thing, I said. I finally woke up. I set the phone down and walked to the closet. I was still shaking, but a small flame had caught in my chest. Amanda might have shaved my head, but she couldn't strip away the pride and will I'd honed for decades. I pulled a navy silk dress off the hanger, the one I bought myself for my birthday after closing a 30-story tower deal in downtown Boston. I smoothed the cool fabric and remembered that feeling of victory I knew I'd need it today, not just as a dress, but as armor. The landline rang. I jumped. Not Michael, not Amanda. It was Lucia, my hairstylist of over 20 years. My throat tightened, but I kept even. Lucia, I need you right now. Bring the best wig you have. No one can know. She didn't pry. She only whispered, I'll be there in 20 minutes. While I waited, I sat in the armchair by the window and looked out at the yard under the first snow. White flakes drifted down, covering every branch, every red brick path I'd walked thousands of times. Memories crashed in. The day I became a widow at 32, the night I buried my husband with 12-year-old Michael asleep in my arms, and I swore he would never know fear or hunger. I kept that vow for 3 decades. I worked without stopping. Dawn runs from job sites to the office. Late nights reading contracts until my eyes blurred. The first apartments, then a commercial building, then a mall. Every brick, every contract tied to my blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. And now all of it stood to fall into the hands of a woman who saw me as disposable. I realized too late. Then Amanda arrived and made it worse. From day one, I felt the chill in her eyes. Smooth talker, good at charming a room with travel stories, fashion, career plans. But when she looked at me, it was scrutiny. No interest in the woman who'd raised Michael. I let it slide, telling myself time would soften things. Instead, I was pushed to the margins. At family dinners, she tossed light jabs. "Mrs. Westfield, don't you think that color ages you? Maybe try something fresher." Michael just laughed, nodding along like a shadow. I sat there with my salad, forcing a smile to keep the table from turning into a battlefield. Each time another scar etched into my heart. I kept handing over money and kept my mouth shut because I was afraid of one thing: losing my son. I believed that if I was more generous, if I gave them more, maybe Michael would remember a mother's love. That's why I prepared the massive wedding gift, $22 million. To me, it was the last key, the hope of keeping me connected to Michael and helping Amanda see I wasn't an obstacle but an ally. But this morning shattered that illusion. The shaved hair, the mocking note, everything hit like a slap that woke me up. Suddenly I could see clearly. For years I traded my health, youth, and self-respect to hold on to a bond that was already rotten. Sitting in the church, listening to the choir rehearse, I lightly touched the wig on my head. It was soft, hiding an ugly truth, but underneath I knew my scalp still burned. That wound was my life in miniature, a shiny surface of success with tears inside left by the people I loved most. I drew a deep breath. Only one question remained. Would I let them keep defining my worth, or would I stand up and define myself? I stayed on the dark wooden pew a moment longer, gripping an old hymnal. The chill of St. Andrew's seeped through every crack into my skin, making me shiver. On the main altar, helpers were lighting candles, their gold glow trembling up the high arched ceiling. Everything looked beautiful, solemn, just as Amanda wanted. But to me, that reverence was only the backdrop for a carefully staged farce. I stood and stepped into the side hall. My heels clicked softly on the stone, blending with the bridesmaids' whispers ahead. I meant to step outside for air, but then I froze. In the quiet, a familiar voice came, low and urgent. It was Michael. I pressed against a large stone column carved with classical patterns, forcing my breathing to slow. My son's voice carried in a hushed echo, each word slicing the space. "Vanessa, no, don't show up here now. I told you, just wait until after the ceremony." That name stabbed my chest. Vanessa Park. I'd seen her many times at Michael's office, the young secretary with quick eyes and a bright smile. I used to think she was just a dedicated assistant. Now everything was clear as day. Michael went on, voice dropping to a whisper into the phone. After I get that money from my mother, everything will change. We won't have to hide anymore, won't have to sneak around. Just be patient a little longer. I let the hymnal fall to my lap, my hands shaking hard. Each word hit my ears like a cold blade. That money he meant was the wedding gift I'd planned. $22 million. The work of my lifetime suddenly turned into a ticket for my son to run off with his mistress while he was still about to marry Amanda. I tilted my head, heart pounding. Michael's voice came again, heavier. You know how my mother is. She always wants to please me, always afraid I'll go without. As soon as she signs this afternoon, we'll have it all. A fresh start, freedom, no strings. I bit my lip to keep from making a sound. My son, the boy who once cried into a pillow for his father, now saw me as a wallet. He wasn't just betraying me, he was betraying his own wedding, turning those vows into a joke. In that moment, I heard footsteps rush through the hall. Michael lowered his voice. I have to go. Keep it quiet. After the honeymoon, I'll take care of everything. Vanessa, trust me. Then the call cut off, leaving a thick silence. I slipped back into the shadows, pretending to study a flower arrangement in the corner. A few staffers hurried by, paying me no mind. Michael stepped out from behind the column, straightened his jacket, a flicker of strain crossing his face before he smiled. The smile everyone expects from a happy groom. But I had seen and I had heard. I returned to the pew and sat like a beautiful churchgoer. In my purse, the tiny recorder glowed red, quietly storing every lie Michael had said. My chest ached, but something inside had hardened. I no longer clung to the fantasy that money would mend a mother-son bond. I knew I'd just gotten my first piece of evidence, the weapon to keep me from the trap my son and daughter-in-law were setting. I closed my eyes and steadied my breath. The organ swelled in rehearsal, urgent and then lingering. People would see me this morning as a proud mother waiting for her son to walk the aisle. But only I knew that from the moment I heard that call, my heart had shifted from hurt to resolve. When I opened my eyes, colored light from the stained glass fell across my hands in bands of green, red, purple, and gold. I stared at it and thought, maybe God is showing me the way, not the road of tears, but of truth. I tightened my grip on the purse where the warm evidence rested, and I promised myself, when the moment comes, I won't tremble like I did in the mirror this morning. I will be Eleanor Westfield, the woman who isn't afraid and who is ready to expose everything. I stayed on the pew, working my breath back into rhythm after what I just overheard. A cold, metallic ringing kept sounding inside me, a warning that the truth wasn't done. I knew Michael had another woman, knew he was only waiting for the money to leave Amanda, but in my bones, I felt Amanda wasn't innocent either. She'd never bothered to hide that condescending look. She saved just for me. I wanted to know what she truly thought, wanted to see my future daughter-in-law's real face, not the glossy one she wore. I rose and slipped down the corridor toward the bridal prep room. The polished marble floor reflected my steps. At the far end, the door sat half open, white light spilling out along with bouncy music and the sharp laughter of several women. I stopped just outside, heart racing, but my feet refused to move away. Through the crack, Amanda's voice rang out, clear as day high, confident, brimming with triumph. You know what? In just a few hours, I'll have the entire fortune in my hands, 22 million, and by law, I get half. Michael's so naive, he has no idea. Laughter broke out. I went rigid. My fingers dug into the door frame, my palms ice cold. Amanda kept going lower now, but edged with malice. And after that, I'm filing for divorce. I've already contacted an attorney. I don't need to stay with Michael forever. With that money, I can start fresh, freer, and more comfortable. A bridesmaid giggled. What about the mother-in-law? She's a handful, acts like the house is hers. Amanda dropped her voice cold as ice. Don't worry. Once the money's in, I'll push Michael to put her in a high-end nursing home. Park her there. Let someone else handle her. Once she's out of the house and the company, she won't have a say in anything. The room burst into shrill laughter, crisp as blades slicing my skin. I shook all over, but not from fear. It was anger rising from the marrow, a firestorm burning away the weakness of my morning. I stood there, frozen, until I realized I was crushing the recorder in my purse. The red light kept blinking faithfully, catching every word, every bitter laugh. I closed my eyes for a second and knew I'd just gripped a double-edged knife. One edge to protect, the other to strike back. I eased away without a sound. My heart hammered like it would explode, but my steps held steady. I knew if I stayed 1 minute longer, I'd charge in and scream in Amanda's face. I didn't. Life had taught me enough. Big battles aren't won by hot anger, but by patience and planning. Back in the main sanctuary, no one noticed I'd been gone. Guests were gathering. Chatter filled the air. I smiled and greeted them, burying the storm twisting inside me. In the colored glass, I caught my reflection, a silver-haired woman in a navy dress, deep red lipstick. No one knew that only a few steps away, I just heard my future daughter-in-law call me an old woman who needs to be locked away. I sat, hands loosely folded. Inside my purse, the recording had become a living piece of proof. I pictured it playing for the crowd, Amanda's smug laughter echoing her face, going pale as she realized everything was out. The thought gave me an odd, cooling calm. Amanda wanted me erased, tucked away in some distant nursing home. Michael wanted to drain the money and run with his lover. Both thought I was weak, old, easily beaten, but that contempt gave me strength. I would turn their trap into my launch pad. In that instant, I knew the morning's humiliation had become a pivot point. From the shaved scalp, the spiteful note, the false vows I overheard behind the column, to the vicious laughter in the bridal room, together they formed an indictment I didn't need to add a single word to. All I had to do was wait for the right moment. I drew a deep breath and looked toward the altar. candlelight washed the Virgin's face. Quietly, I told myself, they think I've lost. They have no idea I've just begun. I straightened my shawl, sat tall, and let a gentle smile return. Anyone passing by would see only a kind, proud mother of the groom on a big day. But I knew behind that smile a double-edged blade was ready, and when I drew it, none of them would see it coming. The church bells pealed each round, rolling through the space like a familiar refrain. Guests took their seats. White-draped pews were dotted with deep red roses. I sat in the front row on the groom's side, fingers lightly holding the small clutch on my lap. All eyes turned to the back where Amanda was about to enter on her father's arm. The big doors opened. She appeared in a white French lace gown, the train nearly touching the steps. Murmurs and gasps spread. Camera flashes popped. Amanda beamed, gliding forward like the heroine in a fairy tale. I watched her and couldn't help recalling the cruel words from the dressing room minutes ago. Behind that shimmer was a calculating heart, and I was the only one here who knew it. Michael waited at the end of the aisle, sharp, in a black tuxedo with a crisp white tie. His smile beamed, but to me it was only a mask. I heard his whisper on the phone in my head. After I get that money from my mother, everything will change. The image of the boy who once gripped my hand, shaky on toddler legs, was gone. In front of me stood a man who'd sold off both conscience and kinship. The ceremony began. The priest's opening words were steady and solemn, echoing under the high vault. I tried to focus, but every marriage is a sacred union landed like a taunt. I glanced around, teary eyes, tender smiles, people sure they were witnessing true love. Only I knew they were watching a carefully staged production. When it came time for the vows, Michael turned to Amanda, his voice low and steady. I promise to love you, respect you, share every joy and sorrow with you, and be by your side for life. I bit my lip and listened. Every word carved into the morning's memory like a blade. He promised fidelity, yet just hours earlier he'd been whispering to another woman. He promised a future together while planning in his head to leave his wife once he got the money. Then it was Amanda's turn. She lifted her face, eyes shining as if full of love. I promise to stand by you, care for you, face every challenge together, and keep this love forever. I almost laughed. Her vows were pretty as a poem, but in my head I still heard the chill of her words. I'll file for divorce. After that, the mother-in-law goes to a nursing home. That scheming tone and her glowing face were so opposite it made my skin crawl when the priest asked, "Does anyone object to this marriage?" For a second I wanted to stand and shout that the whole ceremony was a lie, but I clenched my hands and held back. Not yet. The trap I'd set needed time, and that big audience was exactly the witness I wanted when the truth came out. I took a deep breath and gave a faint smile, the kind a mother would wear on a big day. Finally, the bells rang bright and the priest declared them husband and wife. Michael leaned down to kiss Amanda and the church burst into applause. I clapped, too slow, firm, smiling the whole time. On the outside, I looked like any proud mother. Inside, every round of applause only confirmed it. Everything I'd just seen was an empty show. As the couple turned to walk out to the cheerful music, I rose and followed, my eyes on the white train and the glossy tuxedo. They thought they'd already won, that I was just a mother pushed aside. But I knew this: the more perfect this ceremony looked, the harder their fall would be. I brushed my hand over my purse where the recorder was safe. The evidence was enough to expose it all. I pictured Michael's face when he realized he'd been found out. Amanda's panic when she heard her own voice ring out before a crowd. A strange calm settled over me. People poured out of the church toward the lavishly decorated reception hall. White flowers stretched everywhere. Champagne sparkled. Music pulsed. Guests laughed, toasted, raised their glasses. I moved among them, composed, smiling as I greeted familiar faces. No one saw that behind my calm mask I was holding a storm ready to break. In my head, every step was set. I'd wait until the room drew together, until everyone lifted their glasses to listen to me speak. Then the lies would be dragged into the light, and no one could deny them. I took my seat at the front table under warm golden lights and quietly watched Michael and Amanda sit side by side, holding hands, smiling at guests. It moved many people. To me, it was just makeup and masks covering rot. I breathed in slow and deep and told myself, let them enjoy their last moments of glory. After that, the stage is mine. The music softened and the murmur of conversation faded. The chandelier lights pulled into a bright circle over the head table where Michael and Amanda sat. My son grinned wide, his face flushed from wine and self-satisfaction. Amanda matched him, glowing like a bride who had just grabbed her dream. The MC gently announced, "And now please welcome Eleanor, the groom's mother, to share a few words on this special day." Heads turned, expectant eyes landed on me. My heart tightened for a beat, then steadied. This was the moment I'd prepared for since I walked into the ceremony. I stood and slowly lifted a glass of champagne. Chairs scraped toasts. Hushed, all eyes rose. I smiled the smile of a proud mother while the storm gathered. First, thank you all for being here to celebrate with our family. For me, this moment is sacred because I get to see my son step into a new chapter of his life. Applause rippled. I paused, took a small sip, set the glass down. My voice dropped slow but clear. For 33 years, I've lived by a promise. Since my husband passed, I swore I would protect Michael with everything I had, give my son a full life, and never let him face the want I once knew. A few soft awes rose from nearby tables. Some older guests nodded warm-eyed. I let it sit, then continued. And today I plan to give my son and his new wife a wedding gift, a substantial one, $22 million, the savings of my lifetime, the result of decades of work. The room stirred. I heard the surprised murmurs, a few gasps. Michael squeezed Amanda's hand, his face tightening slightly as he forced a smile. Amanda's eyes lit, her lips curled. I drew a deep breath, lifted my head and shifted tone. But there's something life has taught me. Not every sacrifice is valued, and not everyone deserves the gift you give. The air dipped. Curious looks turned toward me. Michael leaned forward, ready to speak, but I raised a hand to stop him. I pulled a small recorder from my purse and set it on the table. The red light blinked on. Before I decide, I think everyone should hear a few truths. Silence fell. I pressed play. Michael's voice filled the quiet. After I get that money from my mother, everything will change. We won't have to hide anymore. Just be patient a little longer. The audio was so clear. A few mouths fell open. Michael blanched and cut in. "Mom, this is a misunderstanding." I looked him straight in the eye, calm but firm. "A misunderstanding? Then where did these words come from? Whose mouth, Michael?" Noise rose. Guests whispered. Amanda looked at her husband, eyes wide with alarm, then tried to cover with a stiff smile. I didn't give them time. I hit the next clip. "You know how my mother is. She always wants to please me. As soon as she signs this afternoon, we'll have everything. A fresh start, freedom, no strings." When it ended, the room erupted like a kicked beehive. Michael stammered, sprang up. It was just a joke. Don't take it the wrong way." I narrowed my eyes, cutting through him. A joke. Joking about betraying a marriage, joking about treating your mother like a wallet. Michael went silent, sweat beading on his forehead. Amanda tried to hold his hand. His hand shook. I turned, fixing my gaze on her. "And Amanda, you have something to explain too." I pulled a small note from my purse. The nasty line I found on my pillow that morning. "Congratulations, you finally have a haircut that matches your age. Enjoy my wedding." I held it up for the nearest tables to see. "You plan to erase me from this celebration by shaving my head in my sleep. A cheap, degrading stunt." Amanda shot up, face flaming. "That's not mine. You're making this up." I smiled. Cool. "Really? Then why did you brag in the bridal room at noon that you'd divorce in a few months and take half the money? I heard everything, and I have witnesses if needed." The room froze. Some guests glanced at each other. Others whispered into their phones, clearly recording. Amanda's face went white, her lips trembling without sound. I let the silence stretch, then slowly raised my glass. "So I'm canceling the $22 million gift. Neither of you deserves a penny of the money I earned with blood and tears." Conversation crashed like a wave. Michael collapsed into his chair, head down, hand over his face. Amanda stood, rigid, shaking. I ended in a level voice that carried, "The greatest wedding gift I can give today is the truth, and the truth is this: greed and betrayal never win." I set the glass down and turned to leave. Chairs scraped, voices rose. A few "Oh my gods" rang out behind me, but my steps were light and steady. I was no longer the woman trembling in the mirror this morning. I was the one who stripped the masks off my son and daughter-in-law in front of everyone. In that moment, I knew I'd taken back control, and the game from here on out had only just begun. I left the hall with my back straight, neither rushing nor hesitating. Each step tapped evenly on the tile like a reminder that the weight had lifted from my shoulders. Behind me, chaos still rolled. Chairs dragged, people calling out, the sounds of a wedding turned storm. I had just reached the grand lobby when I heard hurried footsteps. Michael rushed up and grabbed my arm. The handsome groom's polish was gone, replaced by panic and bloodshot eyes. "Mom, please don't do this. You misunderstood. It was all just..." I turned and met his eyes, the eyes that once made me proud, now filled with desperation. I pulled my arm free, my voice low and firm. "I've heard enough, Michael. There's no misunderstanding." He stammered for an excuse. I only said that to test her. I never meant..." "Enough!" I cut him off, my voice ringing through the wide lobby. "Don't turn betrayal into a joke. I gave my whole life for you, and this is how you repay me." Michael froze his mouth, working, but no words coming out. His face twisted for a moment, anger and despair tangled together. Then, as if giving up, he dropped to his knees, hands clutching his head, and whispered, I was wrong." I didn't answer. I gave him one look and turned away. Right then, Amanda burst out of the hall, her puffed wedding dress slowing her down, but she still lunged forward. Her face had gone pale, her makeup starting to smear, crimson lips trembling. She shrieked, voice shrill, "You made that up! You ruined my wedding!" Her scream drew a few curious guests outside. I stood calmly watching her snarl like a cornered animal. "Ruined it!" I curled a cold smile. "I only told the truth. You should thank me for showing everyone your real face sooner." Amanda lunged, trying to snatch the paper from my hand, but an older male guest held her back just in time. His voice was hard. "Amanda, calm down. We all heard it. How are you going to deny it?" She broke down, sobbing, mascara streaking her cheeks, all her earlier haughtiness gone. In the chaos, I saw her parents step outside too. They didn't go to their daughter. They stood frozen at the door, eyes full of disappointment. Her father lowered his head, and her mother kept shaking hers as if witnessing the worst humiliation of their lives. By then, Michael had gotten up, gaunt and sharp-faced, and snapped at Amanda. "You betrayed me too." She turned back, choking up. I just wanted a better future. Her weak excuses sank under the guests' angry whispers. Some shook their heads, others walked off without a backward glance. I looked at the two of them, and a feeling I couldn't name rose in me. Not joy, not gloating, just relief that the truth was finally out. I took a few more steps toward the exit, but behind me, Michael ran after me again. This time, his voice not frantic, but desperate. "Mom, please don't abandon me. I know I was wrong. Please give me one more chance. I'll change." I stopped, turned my back to him so he couldn't see the tears on my cheeks. Then I answered, slow but firm, "Michael, I've given you chances your whole life. You chose to throw them all away. Now you have to live with the consequences." I didn't wait for his reply. I kept walking, leaving behind the choking sobs of my only son. Outside the hall, the decorated cars still lined up, flowers still bright, but no one wanted photos anymore. Guests drifted off the air, heavy like smoke clinging to the walls. I could feel it. This dream wedding had collapsed in just a few minutes. An old friend, Helen, hurried after me and took my hand. She whispered, "Eleanor, you did the right thing. They needed to be exposed." I nodded lightly and said nothing more. Back in the car, I settled into the back seat and looked through the window. In a final glimpse, I saw Michael standing stunned in the lobby while Amanda sobbed and shoved at people. The scene looked like a warped painting of wetted bliss. I closed my eyes and told myself that today's storm was only the beginning. I knew the aftershocks would keep coming. They would come to me begging or raging, but I was ready now. I wasn't the soft mother anymore. I was Eleanor Westfield, and I had decided to step out of the spiral of lies. The next morning, I woke as pale sunlight slipped through my bedroom curtains. No more wedding clamor, no more of Michael's breathless pleading or Amanda's furious wailing, only quiet, and inside me a resolve clearer than ever. I brewed a pot of coffee and poured it into my favorite white china mug with the rose print. As the warm scent filled the kitchen, I sat down and pulled out an old notebook. I opened to the first page crammed with financial plans and figures I once treated as proof of a lifetime of sacrifice for family. But today I took a red pen and crossed out every line, every allocation for Michael. In that moment, I realized that money, no matter how much, turns into a weapon against you when you give it to the wrong person. I had raised a dependent man who never learned to stand on his own, and now he was willing to sell out his own mother for a fake freedom. That painful truth snapped me awake, and I knew I had to act before it was too late. I called my trusted attorney, Richard Cole, who'd stood with me through real estate deals for 2 decades. His warm, deep voice carried a hint of surprise at a Sunday morning call. "Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor. I thought you'd be resting after the wedding yesterday." I gave a thin smile and said, "Yesterday was memorable to say the least, and because of it, I want to see you today. We need to change the entire will and the transfer documents. No delays." He was quiet for a few seconds, then answered firmly, "I'll head to the office now. Can you meet me at 10, Dudley?" I nodded, feeling light as if a stone had been lifted off my chest. Richard's law office sits in a red brick building downtown, about a 15-minute drive from my house. When I walked in, he was already seated, silver frames slipping down his nose, a thick file set neatly on the desk. He looked at me with sympathetic eyes. "I've heard bits about the ceremony. Sounds like you faced a major shock." I let out a long breath, then gave him a brief rundown. The shaved head, the nasty note Michael's phone called to his lover Amanda's venom in the bridal room. Richard listened without interrupting, only nodding now and then. When I finished, he closed the file face grave. I understand, and you were right to call me. First order of business is the will. Michael will no longer be an heir. Do you want to leave anything to any other family member? I shook my head. No, I want everything moved to a charity fund supporting widows and single mothers starting businesses. They truly know the value of money and they need it to rebuild. Richard jotted notes quickly, then asked, "What about the trust you set up for Michael?" I sat up straight, voice firm. "Terminate it. I want to shut off every pipeline. Not a single dollar goes to him or Amanda." Over the next few hours, we combed through every contract and clause. I signed the new pages, feeling like I was closing an old door and opening a brighter one. Each stroke of the pen was a cut, severing Michael's dependence on me. When I signed the last document, I leaned back and took a deep breath. I felt released, as if my blood finally flowed freely again after years of being pinned down. Richard gave me a small smile. "I know this wasn't easy, but sometimes freedom comes from drawing a hard line. Mrs. Eleanor, you just did the most important thing for the rest of your life." I nodded, gratitude filling me. Back home, I walked into the living room and looked around at the paintings on the walls and the family photos from when Michael was little. For years, I kept them as proof of motherhood and sacrifice. But now I understood keeping them out didn't matter anymore. I wasn't erasing memories, but I wouldn't let them bind me either. I opened the safe, took out savings books and company share documents and filed them neatly into a separate cabinet. I labeled it clearly Freedom Fund. 3 simple words with the weight of a vow. From now on, money would no longer be the chain tying me to people who don't deserve it. It would be a tool for me and for those who truly need help. That evening, I sat on the porch listening to waves thud in the distance. A glass of red wine glowed on the table. I looked up at a sky full of stars and felt the cool breeze pass over my scalp where a fine layer of new hair was beginning to grow. I smiled. My reflection in the glass door no longer hurt. It felt like a symbol of a beginning. My phone rang non-stop. Michael, Amanda, unknown numbers I guessed were relatives. I silenced it and let the screen light and go dark. My decision was made. From now on, I am no one's bank. A calm rose inside me. I knew there were more storms ahead. Michael wouldn't let go easily. Amanda would try to maneuver, but this time I was ready. I had the law on my side, evidence in my hand, and most of all, a new faith in myself. I took a sip of wine and whispered, "Freedom finally found me." Those first days after rewriting the will, I lived in a strange quiet, the big house once echoing with Michael's footsteps, or Amanda's shrill laugh held only the ticking clock and the wind slipping through the window. Instead of emptiness, I felt a rare peace. I began to rearrange my life. Financial files went into cabinets. Long, dusty family photos came down from the shelves. I didn't throw them out. I packed them carefully into a large box and stored it deep in the closet. I needed new space for myself. All this time, I'd been the manager, the sacrificer, the protector. I had never truly lived for me. One morning, I walked past a small shop near the beach. A simple wooden sign hung on the clear glass door, landscape painting classes for all ages. I stood there, peering in, seeing a few women gathered around a long table, brushes in hand, focused on small canvases. Light streamed through the skylight, falling over faces lined with years, but bright with excitement. My heart stirred. I remembered my dream at 18 to learn to paint, buried by the weight of making a living. That afternoon, I went back and signed up. The teacher's name was Marianne, a woman about my age, hair loose, voice warm and calm. She smiled when I fumbled with the brush. No grades here, just joy. Let your hand lead your heart. The first lesson was seascapes. I looked out the window at white caps breaking on the sand. I laid my first stroke on the canvas, shy, as if learning to write again. Then patches of blue and silvery gray began to appear. The smell of oil paint, the feel of bristles sliding across rough fabric, it all made me feel like a child discovering the world. When I finished my first painting, awkward as it was, my eyes stung with tears. I had given myself permission to live and breathe in a new way. From then on, I went every week. I got to know other women, most of whom had weathered loss. Some were widows, some estranged from their children, others fighting illness. We sat side by side, painting and talking like threads of different colors, weaving a new cloth. I didn't feel alone anymore. Outside of class, I often carried a folding chair to the beach near my house. In the mornings, the sea was glassy blue. In the afternoons, sunlight tipped the waves and turned the water into countless shards of sparkling glass. I sat for hours, filling page after page, letting the salty wind play in my hair. The ocean never bored me. Every day, a new face, every moment, a different shade. Like me, relearning myself, changing day by day. In class, I grew especially close to a man named Thomas. He was a few years older than me, salt and pepper hair, tall and lean. He had been a structural engineer, retired early after his wife died of cancer. He chose painting to fill the emptiness. I remember the first time we sat together. He tilted his head and smiled. I'm not good at painting, but I'm great at ruining a canvas. That's why I sit near someone who can inspire me. I laughed. That simple line eased my heart. From then on, we traded tips on color and mixing paint. One day, I smeared a corner of my canvas by accident. Thomas leaned over. Don't worry, mistakes can become the focal point. My life is proof. We laughed, and in that laughter, I realized it had been a long time since my heart felt that light. After class, Thomas often walked with me to the beach. We talked about the past, our children, and lonely days. He didn't pry or judge, he just listened with quiet respect. Once I blurted out the story of Michael and Amanda, the hurt I'd just been through. I worried he'd be shocked or pity me, but Thomas only nodded. I get it. Losing trust in family can hurt more than losing money, but you're standing here. That means you chose to move forward. That's worth more than any amount of money. My throat tightened. No flowery comfort, just one short sentence, and I felt seen. Little by little, I found myself again. I no longer woke up worried about what my son needed or what my daughter-in-law would criticize. I woke to choose a new palette, to walk on the sand, to hear Thomas talk about a project he once designed. I realized life after 65 isn't an ending, it can be a beginning. One evening, as a fiery sunset spread across the horizon, I set my brush down and looked at the painting I just finished. In it, the sea stretched wide, the sky glowed, and in the right corner I painted a woman standing tall, silver hair blowing in the wind. That was me, but not the fragile, dependent Eleanor. It was the new Eleanor, free, at ease, smiling at her own reflection. I understood then art didn't just pull me out of the dark. It gave me a mirror for my soul. With the ocean, the colors, and a friend who knew how to listen, I'd begun the journey back to myself, a journey I once never dared to imagine. One early fall afternoon, coming home from class, with beach sand still clinging to my shoes, I saw a familiar car by my gate, Michael's. The door was cracked open, and he was in the driver's seat, looking defeated, a far cry from the polished groom he once was. I sighed my hand, pausing on the latch. I knew this moment would come sooner or later, our final confrontation. When Michael saw me, he hurried out. His eyes were hollow, dark circles stark on his face. He came closer, voice shaking. "Mom, please let me talk to you just once." I stayed quiet, opened the gate, and motioned him into the living room. The room glowed with late afternoon light, my seascapes on the walls. Michael sat on the sofa, hands clenched together, trembling. I sat across from him, a careful distance between us, my gaze steady. He stared at the floor. "I've lost everything, Mom. Amanda left. The company I invested in went under. Friends disappeared. I have nothing left." I listened, a mix of pity, anger, and exhaustion rising in me. I asked, calm but clear, "So what are you here to ask me for today?" Michael looked up, eyes red. "Not money. I know you won't give it anymore. I want your forgiveness. I can't sleep, Mom. Your voice from that night keeps echoing in my head. I feel awful." I studied his face for a few seconds, lines of fatigue, eyes that once shone with pride now dulled. I said slowly, "Michael, forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. Forgiveness is for my peace. Not so you can lean on me and depend on me again." He broke down, crying the heavy, sad sound of a grown man. He dropped to his knees and took my hand. "Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know why I was so blind. I'll change. I'll start over if you'll give me a chance to stand by you." I pulled my hand back, gentle but firm. I shook my head. "Michael, you're my son. That will never change. But the bond of money, of expectations, of unconditional sacrifice, that's broken. I'm not your life raft anymore. If you want to start over, you have to stand up on your own." His eyes drifted like a man lost in a dark night without a path. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the distant sea. The horizon burned red. The white caps rolled in. I turned back, voice resolute. You know, I found myself again painting the ocean, and new friends showed me I can live fully without anyone's approval or fake gratitude. You need to learn that for yourself. Michael stood, eyes wet, nodding weakly. He took a few steps toward the door, then stopped. So is this the last time I can see you? I stepped closer, set my hand on his shoulder, light but steady. No, I'm still your mother, but from now on, I open this door only when you come, as a man who takes responsibility, not as a child who makes demands. The day you do that, you'll find I'm still here. He bit his lip, said nothing more, and left quietly. The door clicked shut, leaving me in the still room, honeyed sunlight spilling across the wall. I sat down and poured myself a cup of tea. My heart didn't feel completely light, but something was unmistakable. An invisible cord had been cut. I was no longer bound by the guilt of a mother's duty that chained me for years. Michael would answer for what he had done. Outside the window, the scarlet sea faded into deep purple. I suddenly remembered the painting I finished yesterday, a woman standing tall against rough waves, unbroken. I smiled. That woman is me, and today I finally lived up to her. I lifted the teacup, letting the scent of jasmine drift through the air, and told myself, I've faced it, I've cut it off, and I'm free. Spring came late that year, and maybe that's why it was so stunning. Along the road to the beach, rows of cherry trees burst open in the breeze, pale pink petals falling softly, dusting shoulders and footsteps. I strolled under the branches, brushing each petal with my fingertips, feeling my heart warm as if the whole universe were whispering, "It's time to begin again." The seaside house looked completely different now. Beige walls were dotted with my own paintings, from sunset seas to lavender fields. I imagined each piece was a shard of my soul, a marker on the path where I learned to love myself. I once thought hair, a dress, or a set of jewelry measured my worth. Now I understand. True worth is in daring to rise from the ashes and bloom at an age no one expects. In the mornings, I brew a pot of jasmine tea and open the window so the salty air rolls in. I sit at the easel and lay down brighter colors than before, no longer only heavy grays. My canvases glow with yellow, pink, and sea green. It's like I'm painting myself in a late bloom season. Flowers not meant for 20s, but for a seasoned heart that still stirs and still dreams. Thomas, my classmate from painting, still drops by. Some days he brings a bunch of blazing red tulips, sets them on the table, and says, half joking, half earnest, "Late blooming flowers are still flowers, Eleanor, and they often hold their color longer." I smile, neither denying nor confirming, just letting joy slip into each moment. We sit on the porch, watch the ocean, sip coffee. He talks about structures he once designed. I talk about the years I juggled ledgers and sleepless nights. Once he looked at me for a long time and said, "You know, I've never seen anyone as brave as you. Most people stay silent and endure. You chose to walk away." His words quieted something deep inside me. I didn't answer right away, just turned to the sea, where white caps kept rolling in like steady heartbeats. One afternoon, our class held a small town exhibit. I brought a few of my pieces, both nervous and self-conscious. But when I saw them hanging beside others, I realized they held their own. A visitor lingered before Woman in the Sea and asked, Who painted this? I'd like to buy it. I shook my head with a gentle smile. I'm sorry, this one isn't for sale. It's a personal reminder. He nodded, understanding. The story made its way around class. Marianne, our teacher, hugged me and whispered, Eleanor, you found your season to bloom. That night, back home, I opened the windows to the ocean breeze. Moonlight laid a silver band across the water, mirroring the starry sky. I stood there a long time, feeling a peace I'd never tasted before. No more resentment, no more sting of betrayal, just a steady faith that life even late can still blossom. My phone buzzed on the table, a message from Michael. The same long paragraphs, the same pleading tone, but this time my hand didn't shake to delete them. I left them alone calm. I'd said everything in our final face-to-face. I didn't owe more explanations, and those bonds no longer held me. I set down my tea, picked up my brush and painted a white flower opening in the night against a deep violet sky, a late bloom but whole. And as I laid the final strokes, I knew I was painting my own heart, a heart scarred by hurt, yet patient enough to wait for its full bloom. I whispered as if to myself, my season has come late, but beautiful. I never imagined that at my age I could live an entirely different life. A life not revolving around checks, strained family dinners, or being crushed by responsibility. Now every morning I wake to watch the dawn pink the sea, to lift my brush and add another patch of color to my painting. I still remember the day I dared to speak the truth at the wedding. It was the turning point of my life. For years, I let silence chain me, let fear hold me down. But one brave moment set me free. Since then, I've understood truth can hurt and cost you, but it's the only road to freedom. Michael. He still texts sometimes, occasionally calls. I don't avoid him, but I don't chase him either. I answer briefly, calmly. I show him that a mother's love remains, but reliance and exploitation do not. My son must learn to be a man, take responsibility, and build his own life. That's the only gift I can leave him, and it's worth more than $22 million. As for Amanda, she vanished from town after the wrecked wedding. I heard she moved to another state, living quietly. I'm neither angry nor pleased. I understand the harshest punishment didn't come from me. It came from the truth in daylight. Once the mask falls, no one believes the pretty words. That's the heaviest sentence. Some afternoons I sit on the porch and watch the white caps, thinking how far I've come. From a widow scraping to save every dollar for my child, to a mother betrayed by her son, to the woman who stood up and exposed it all. I lost plenty, but I found myself, and in the end, I'm grateful even for the losses. They cleared a path to my real life. I'm not young, but I have my late bloom. My first paintings now hang in a small seaside shop, not to make money, but to prove that age can't cage a creative spirit. Thomas drops by sometimes with a book or a new tube of paint, and we sit talking under the sunset. I don't call it late love, just companionship, and that for me is enough. If there's anything I want to tell those listening, It's this: never think it's too late to start over. Truth may make you tremble, but once you speak it, your steps feel lighter. Don't wait for someone to hand you your worth. You can find it in your own hands, in your hobbies, in the small things your heart points to. I know many of you may be living with the fears I carried: fear of losing affection, of being abandoned, of a family breaking if you stop sacrificing. But remember, real love is never built on taking advantage. Sometimes cutting a toxic tie is the only way to save yourself. And now, as I close my story, I want to say thank you. Thank you for staying, for walking with me through the dark, through the tremors, the tears, and the final smiles. Your presence, dear audience, proves that the story of an ordinary woman like me can still touch another heart. If you've known betrayal, dismissal, or being used, I hope you find a spark here to stand up. And if your days are peaceful, cherish them. They are priceless. I'll end with a warm ask. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Every story and experience deserves to be heard. If this journey meant something to you, tap like so. I know I'm not speaking into the void. And if you'd like to keep walking together, subscribe so we can meet again in other stories, ones about truth, courage, and the strength of our later years. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for giving me your precious time. We may not know each other in real life, but in this moment, our hearts touched. 9 months after the wedding, I stood before my easel on the porch, adding touches of gold to a seascape at sunset. Thomas sat nearby, sketching in his notebook, our comfortable silence punctuated only by the rhythm of waves. We'd fallen into this routine over the past few months, creating together, sharing meals, exchanging thoughts about art and life without pressure or expectation. My phone buzzed. Thomas looked up as I checked the screen. Michael again. His voice held no judgment. I nodded, showing him the message. It wasn't the desperate pleading of early days, but something different, a photograph of a small wooden box with dovetail joints, simple and elegant. The text read, "Made this today. Joseph says I'm getting better." Thomas studied the image. That's actually quite good craftsmanship. The corners are precise. I set the phone down, unsure how to respond. For months, Michael had sent weekly updates, first awkward, then gradually more focused on his new life. 3 months ago, he'd mentioned finding work as an apprentice with Joseph Hadley, the renowned furniture maker. I'd assumed it wouldn't last. Thomas returned to his sketch. "You know, learning a craft like woodworking isn't easy. It takes real commitment." I rinsed my brush, considering. "You think it's genuine then, not another manipulation?" Thomas shrugged. "I can't say for certain. But people can change when they lose everything. Sometimes hitting bottom clears away the pretense." That evening, after Thomas left, I typed a reply for the first time. "The joinery looks clean. Good work. Simple without emotion or promise." Still, my finger hesitated over the send button. Would this crack open a door best left closed? Finally, I pressed send, then set the phone aside, refusing to wait for a response. October arrived with spectacular clarity, painting the New England coastline in fiery hues. My days had found their rhythm, mornings at the easel, afternoons walking the shore or meeting with my painting group, evenings often with Thomas, whose steady presence had become a cornerstone of my new life. The wound of betrayal had scarred over no longer raw, though still part of me. Marianne, our painting instructor, approached me after class one day. "Eleanor, there's a small gallery downtown that features local artists. I've submitted your name for their fall showcase." My surprise must have shown because she laughed. "Don't look so shocked. Your work deserves to be seen." When I hesitated, she added softly, "Sometimes letting others see our truth is the final step in claiming it." 2 weeks later, I found myself standing in the gallery's pristine white space, surrounded by a dozen of my paintings, from turbulent seascapes to gardens bursting with color. Each canvas represented a chapter in my journey from that wedding day to now. The gallery owner believed enough in my work to give me a featured wall in their New Voices exhibition. Emerging artist at 65, I whispered to myself, enjoying the delicious irony. Visitors drifted through the space, some pausing before my work, others passing by. I stayed back, savoring my anonymity, watching strangers connect with pieces of my soul without knowing the woman who created them. The afternoon stretched on until an unmistakable figure appeared in the entrance. Michael stood hesitantly at the threshold, thinner than I remembered, wearing a simple button-down shirt and jeans that bore none of his former pretension. He hadn't seen me yet. I watched him scan the room until his eyes found my collection. He moved toward it with quiet purpose, stopping before Woman Reborn at Sea, my largest piece. For nearly 15 minutes he stood motionless, studying the painting where I'd depicted a silver-haired woman facing a storm-tossed ocean, her stance defiant, unyielding. Other visitors flowed around him like water around a stone. Finally, drawn by some force I couldn't name, I approached. "What do you think of it?" My voice emerged steadier than expected. Michael turned, surprise flickering across his features before settling into cautious recognition. "It's powerful. The woman, she's not running from the storm. She's embracing it." His eyes darted between me and the painting, uncertainty etched in every line of his face. "Mom, I didn't know you'd be here. I saw the exhibition notice in the paper with your name, but I wasn't sure if I'd want you here." The question hung between us, delicate as spun glass. Not accusing, just honest. He nodded, shoulders dropping slightly. I studied him closely. The polished veneer of the wedding day had vanished completely. His hands, once soft and manicured, now bore calluses and tiny nicks. A thin scar crossed his right thumb. "You look different, Michael." He glanced down at himself and gave a slight shrug. "I am different." Pride crept into his voice, subtle but unmistakable. "Joseph Hadley took me on as an apprentice 6 months ago. I'm learning to build furniture. Real things that last." The revelation, though I'd seen hints in his messages, still surprised me. My son, who once considered manual labor beneath him, apprenticed to a craftsman known for exacting standards and modest living. Why furniture making? I asked, genuinely curious. Michael's eyes returned to my painting before answering. After everything fell apart, I had nowhere to go. Greg from college let me crash on his couch for a while. He gave a self-deprecating smile. Eventually, he got tired of my whining and kicked me out. Said I needed to learn what real work feels like. He ran a finger along the edge of the scar on his thumb. I was walking down Maple Street feeling sorry for myself when I saw a helper wanted sign at Joseph's workshop. I figured I couldn't fall any further, so I went in. His voice softened. He took one look at my hands and laughed. But he gave me a chance anyway. Something in his demeanor felt authentic, a humility I'd never seen in him before. I'd like to see your work sometime. I surprised myself with the offer. Michael's eyes widened slightly. Really, I have a small workspace in the back of Joseph's shop. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. His enthusiasm wasn't manufactured. It bubbled up naturally like a child eager to show a new discovery. I'm working on a cherry wood cabinet right now, my first commission piece. A commission already. That's impressive. The words came easily because they were true. Michael shook his head. Joseph's client, really, he's letting me take the lead while he supervises. But still, it's terrifying and exciting at the same time. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. Actually, I have a showing next Friday. Small, just a few pieces, but my cabinet will be there. He offered a simple business card, cream-colored, with embossed lettering, Reed & Son Custom Furniture. Reed & Son. I studied the card, my fingers tracing the raised letters. Joseph suggested it. Michael explained sudden self-consciousness in his voice. Said I'd earned the right to have my name on the card. It's not legally changed or anything, but... He trailed off. I understood what he couldn't articulate. He'd stepped out of the Westfield shadow to forge his own identity. Whether from shame or growth, I couldn't yet tell, but the gesture struck me as significant. I'll try to come, I said, making no definitive promise, but leaving a door ajar that had been firmly closed. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. That would mean a lot. We stood in silence until Michael gestured toward my other paintings. These are all remarkable, Mom. You've always had this gift inside you, haven't you? I considered his question carefully. I don't know if the talent was always there, but the need to express myself was buried for decades under responsibilities I chose to shoulder alone. My words carried no accusation, just acknowledgement of a truth we both recognized. As he prepared to leave, he paused. I'm sorry, Mom, not just for the wedding day, but for everything before that too, for taking you for granted, for seeing you as a resource instead of a person. His voice dropped barely audible. I think about that morning, what you must have felt waking up like that, and it makes me sick. For the first time since I'd known him, his remorse seemed genuine, unattached to what he might gain. I nodded, not ready for full absolution, but acknowledging his words. "You're showing next Friday. What time?" His face brightened. 7 o'clock. Nothing elaborate, just wine and cheese and people looking at furniture. He backed away a step, respecting the careful distance between us. "I'm not asking for anything, Mom. Not money, not forgiveness, just maybe a chance to show you who I'm trying to become." After he left the gallery, owner approached, beaming. "Eleanor, 3 of your pieces have sold already, and that young man seemed particularly moved by your work." I watched Michael's retreating form through the window. "Yes," I replied softly, "he was." The following Friday, I found myself standing outside Joseph Hadley's refurbished warehouse in the old manufacturing district. String lights illuminated a hand-painted sign, "Reed and Son, Autumn Collection." My hand hesitated on the door handle. Was I opening myself to another disappointment, another manipulation? Thomas had offered to accompany me, but I declined. This was a crossing I needed to make alone. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed from workshop to showroom. Spotlights highlighted about a dozen wooden pieces, tables, chairs, cabinets, each with clean lines and evident craftsmanship. A modest crowd mingled, wine glasses in hand. I spotted Michael immediately engaged in conversation with an older couple examining a dining table. He wore a simple button-down with sleeves rolled to reveal forearms newly defined by physical labor. No designer label, no expensive watch, just the craftsman discussing his work. Joseph Hadley himself approached me first, a weathered man in his 70s with wiry strength and calloused hands. "You must be Eleanor. The resemblance is there, especially around the eyes." He extended his hand. "Your son has talent, but more importantly, he's learning patience. Wouldn't stop talking about you coming tonight." As Joseph spoke, Michael spotted me across the room. Pure, unguarded joy flashed across his face before he composed himself. He excused himself from his conversation and made his way over, trying not to appear too eager. "Mom, you came." He gestured around, a nervous energy in his movements. "This is it. Just the beginning, but..." His self-consciousness was endearing in its authenticity. "Show me what you've made, Michael." I kept my tone neutral, but my curiosity was genuine. He led me to a cherry wood cabinet with subtle maple inlay along the borders. It wasn't ostentatious, but the proportions were harmonious, the finish lustrous under the gallery lights. "This is my commission piece for Dr. Rowson's office downtown." The pride in his voice was palpable. I ran my fingers along the smooth surface, noting the perfect dovetail joints at the corners. "You made all of this yourself?" Michael nodded. "Joseph supervised, but yes, 4 months of work." I noticed the absence of hardware. "How does it open?" He pressed lightly on one corner, revealing a clever hidden mechanism. The drawer slid out smoothly, perfectly balanced. "It's beautiful, Michael." The compliment came easily because it was deserved. This wasn't the quick fix, corner-cutting approach my son had always taken. The cabinet reflected care, attention to detail, and most surprisingly, humility. This wasn't a showpiece designed to impress through ostentation, but an object of quiet integrity. Joseph rejoined us eyes twinkling beneath bushy brows. Told him if he could make something this good in his first year, he might have a future. Most of my apprentices take twice as long to reach this level. The older man's gruff praise clearly meant the world to Michael. In their interaction, I glimpsed something Michael and I had never managed to build: a healthy mentorship uncomplicated by family dynamics. As Michael was called away to speak with potential customers, Joseph lingered beside me. When he first showed up at my door, I almost sent him packing. Soft hands, designer clothes, attitude problem. The craftsman shook his head, but there was something in his eyes, like a man who'd lost his way completely. I've seen that look before, usually in men who've hit absolute bottom and are searching for solid ground. I watched Michael across the room, patiently explaining the process of steam bending wood to a fascinated couple. Was he honest with you about his past? Joseph nodded. Eventually, took a while, but one night after working late, he broke down, told me everything, the wedding, the schemes, how he'd treated you. Made no excuses for himself, just laid it bare. And you still kept him on? I couldn't hide my surprise. Joseph's weathered face crinkled in a wry smile. I believe a man's lowest moment doesn't define him. It's what he does after that reveals his character. He nodded toward Michael. That boy has been sleeping on a cot in my workshop's back room for months, working 14-hour days, learning a craft most young men consider beneath them. Never once complained. The old craftsman fixed me with a penetrating look. Whatever he was before, he's earning his redemption one chisel cut at a time. As the evening progressed, I found myself unexpectedly enjoying the atmosphere. These weren't the high society connections Michael once pursued. They were ordinary people who appreciated honest craftsmanship. Near closing time, Michael approached with something cradled carefully in his hands, a small wooden box. I made this for you. He extended it toward me. Whether you wanted to see me again or not, I was going to find a way to get it to you. The box fit perfectly in my palm, its walnut exterior polished to a warm glow. A delicate wave pattern was carved along the edges, reminiscent of my seascapes. When I opened it, the interior was lined with deep blue velvet. Nestled inside was a pendant, a perfectly shaped wooden circle with a miniature painting sealed under clear resin. It took me a moment to recognize the image, a tiny recreation of my woman reborn at sea. You painted this? I couldn't hide my astonishment. Michael shook his head. No, I commissioned Thomas to do it. The revelation that he knew about Thomas, that he'd sought him out to collaborate on this gift, caught me completely off guard. I went to your exhibit 3 times before you noticed me there, Michael admitted. I watched you and Thomas discussing your paintings. I saw how he looks at you, how you smile when he's around. I wanted to respect that new part of your life. I closed the box carefully, emotion threatening to overwhelm me. This must have taken weeks. 2 months working nights after Joseph left. I ruined 17 attempts before getting the joinery right for something this small. He hesitated, then added quietly, "I'm not asking to be back in your will or your bank account, Mom. I just want a chance to be in your life again on completely new terms, as the person I'm becoming, not the person I was." That night, I sat on my porch overlooking the ocean, the wooden box open in my lap. Thomas arrived with 2 cups of tea settling beside me without a word. Finally, I showed him the pendant. "Michael gave me this tonight." Thomas examined it with an artist's eye appreciation evident in his expression. "The craftsmanship is exceptional. He has natural talent." Then, more gently, "How do you feel about seeing him?" I watched moonlight dance across the waves, confused, cautious, but also curious. The person I met tonight bears little resemblance to the son who betrayed me. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "People can change when their foundations are shaken. Not always, but sometimes a complete collapse is the only path to authentic rebuilding." How can I trust that it's real? The question that had haunted me all evening finally emerged. Thomas didn't rush to answer. He set his tea down and faced me directly. "You can't know with absolute certainty. Trust after betrayal isn't rebuilt in a single moment. It's earned through consistent actions over time." His experienced eyes held mine. "But from everything you've told me about Michael before, would that person have spent months learning a craft, sleeping on a workshop cot, creating something with his hands rather than scheming for quick money?" I turned the pendant over in my hands, feeling its smooth contours. No, that Michael would have considered such work beneath him. The realization settled over me like the evening tide, gradual but inevitable. My son was not the same person who had stood before me in that church 9 months ago. Whether the change would last remained to be seen, but denying its existence would be dishonest. "What will you do now?" Thomas asked. I gazed out at the horizon, where stars seemed to touch the ocean's edge. "I'll proceed carefully. No grand gestures, no dramatic reconciliations. Just small steps, maybe coffee next week." I turned the pendant over in my hands. "I want to know this new Michael separate from our history. I want to see if what Joseph believes in him is really there." Thomas smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "That sounds wise," neither closing the door nor throwing it wide open. He gestured to the pendant. "Would you like me to help you put it on?" I nodded, lifting my hair as he fastened the delicate chain around my neck. The wooden circle rested just below my collarbone, surprisingly light despite the weight of its meaning. Winter arrived, transforming the beach into a silver-white canvas stretching to meet a crystalline sky. My days fell into a peaceful rhythm, painting in the mornings, walking the shore at noon, occasionally meeting Michael for coffee at a small cafe halfway between my house and his workshop. Our conversations began awkwardly, but gradually found their footing like muscles relearning movement after disuse. I learned about his daily life, his satisfaction in completing a challenging joint, his growing collection of specialized tools purchased one at a time, as he could afford them, the simple meals he cooked on a hot plate in his small living space behind Joseph's workshop. He never mentioned Amanda, and I never asked. That chapter seemed firmly closed once he mentioned receiving divorce papers at Joseph's address. He signed them without contesting anything, claiming nothing from the brief union. Thomas and I grew closer too. His steady presence brought a warmth I'd forgotten could exist between two people. We neither rushed nor resisted whatever was blooming between us. Having both lived full lives already, we understood the value of patient unfolding. Some evenings he'd bring his sketchbook to my porch, and we'd work side by side in companionable silence, broken only by the rhythmic crash of waves. In late January, an unexpected letter arrived, thick cream stationery with my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a lengthy note from Amanda. Unlike Michael's early pleading messages, her words were clear-eyed and direct. She had moved to Colorado, started working at her uncle's accounting firm, and was facing reality for the first time. She made no excuses for her behavior, but wanted me to know she recognized the damage she'd caused. "I won't ask for forgiveness," she wrote. "Some actions don't deserve it. But I want you to know I think about that morning, what I did to you while you slept, and feel genuine shame. It was cruel, calculated, and beneath human dignity. You deserved better, both as Michael's mother and simply as a person." I read the letter twice, searching for manipulation, but finding none. No requests, no attempts to re-establish contact, just an acknowledgement of wrongdoing and a clear-eyed assessment of her own failings. I tucked the letter away, neither responding nor discarding it. Some debts can't be repaid, but recognition of them counts for something. As winter melted into spring, I made a decision that had been forming gradually in my mind. I invited Michael Joseph and Thomas to dinner at my home the first time my son had crossed my threshold since our confrontation 9 months earlier. I spent the day preparing, not from anxiety, but from a desire to create a beautiful evening. I baked sourdough bread from scratch, simmered beef bourguignon in my grandmother's Dutch oven, and set the table with care. When they arrived, Michael paused in the entryway, visibly moved to be welcomed back into the space. He carried a housewarming gift, a small, exquisitely crafted wooden music box that played Debussy's Clair de Lune. When opened, "I remembered it was your favorite," he said simply. Joseph brought a bottle of his homemade blackberry wine, and Thomas contributed a spring bouquet. Over dinner, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Joseph regaled us with tales from 50 years of craftsmanship, including his early disasters. Michael spoke about a mentorship program he joined teaching basic woodworking to at-risk teenagers on Saturday mornings. Thomas described an upcoming joint exhibition our painting group was planning. I found myself laughing more freely than I had in years. After dessert, I asked the men to join me in the living room. "I have something I'd like to share with you all," I revealed my latest project, establishing a foundation for women rebuilding their lives after major setbacks. Using a significant portion of my estate, the foundation would provide business grants, educational scholarships, and mentorship programs. I've been meeting with women across the city, divorces, widows, those starting over after illness or career collapse. Their stories echo mine in different ways. I unfolded architectural plans on the coffee table. This is the community workspace we're developing downtown. Art studios, workshop spaces, classrooms, childcare facilities. The men leaned forward, examining the plans with genuine interest. Joseph's weathered finger traced the workshop layout. Smart design, natural light from 3 directions. Thomas noted the gallery space with approval, but it was Michael's reaction I watched most carefully. He studied each detail intently, asking thoughtful questions about accessibility and practical considerations. "This is remarkable, Mom." His voice carried sincere admiration. "You're creating something that will outlast all of us." The appreciation in his eyes, unmarred by calculation or jealousy about resources not flowing to him, was perhaps the strongest evidence of his transformation. Later, as the evening wound down, Michael helped me clear dishes, while Thomas and Joseph debated artistic influences on the porch. In the kitchen's privacy, my son spoke softly. "I know I forfeited the right to say this, but I'm proud of you, Mom. What you're building, who you've become since everything happened." He stacked plates carefully, movements precise from his craftsman's training. "You found your true self, and it's magnificent to witness." The simplicity of his observation touched me deeply. "We're both finding our way, I think." I handed him a dish towel. "Different paths than we expected." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Joseph says the grain of the wood tells you how it needs to be shaped. You can't force it to be something it's not." He glanced toward the living room where his mentorship award sat on the mantel beside my painting exhibition announcement. "Maybe people are similar. We spend so much time fighting our true nature, trying to be what others expect." As the men prepared to leave, I found myself standing at the door with my son, a parallel to our wedding day confrontation, but with a profoundly different energy. This time, when Michael asked, "Can I come by next Sunday? I'd like to show you the community garden project I've been volunteering with," I felt no hesitation in my affirmative response. Thomas lingered after the others left, helping me put away the last glasses. "That went well," he observed, studying my expression. "How do you feel?" I considered his question as I wiped down the kitchen counter. "I feel at peace, not because everything is resolved or forgotten, but because I'm making choices from strength rather than fear." I touched the wooden pendant that rarely left my neck. "I'm no longer afraid of losing people's approval or affection. That freedom changes everything." He wrapped his arms around me from behind, a gesture that had become comfortably familiar. "The woman reborn at sea," he murmured against my hair. I turned in his embrace, meeting his gaze directly. "No, just the woman I was always meant to be, finally giving herself permission to exist. Later that night, long after Thomas had gone home with a lingering kiss goodnight, I stood on my porch watching moonlight transform the ocean into molten silver. In the distance, a ship's lights blinked steadily, moving across the horizon with purpose and direction. I thought about journeys, how rarely they follow our planned course, how often the detours become the most important parts. 1 year ago, I had awakened to humiliation and betrayal, my identity literally stripped from me while I slept. The pain had been searing the confrontation necessary, but now running my fingers over my silver-streaked hair that had grown into a stylish bob, I recognized that morning for what it truly was, not an ending, but a beginning. My foundation's first grant recipients would be announced next week. Michael's community garden was breaking ground in the spring. Thomas and I were planning a joint exhibition for the summer. Each of these threads woven together created a tapestry I could never have imagined on that wedding day. I smiled into the darkness, lifting my face to the salt breeze. The betrayal that had been meant to diminish me had instead set me free. Some wounds, it seems, become doors if we have the courage to walk through them.